After the memory wipe of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, players were waiting for the release of Kingdom Hearts 2. Luckily for us, KH2 did not take too long to come out for the PS2. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories was released in November 2004, and Kingdom Hearts 2 was released in December 2005. Gee, another game coming right after a side story game. Boy, it would be nice if they did the same thing for KH3, right? Anyways, Kingdom Hearts 2 was one of the most talked about games when it was first released. Almost anyone with a PS2 had a copy. But you want to know who did not have a copy? Yeah, that's right, me. Sadly, once again, I was out of the loop. Even though I owned a PS2, I was not able to actually get my copy of Kingdom Hearts 2. I was instead looking at game magazines and getting spammed with the KH2 commercial. That was fun during my youth. I was then lucky enough to borrow the game from one of my old friends. So how much does Kingdom Hearts 2 hold up today? Well, let's take a look. Hey there guys, I'm Code Pika, and today we're going to be looking at another Pikaview of Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, the updated version for KH2. Let's get started. Before we can begin talking about Kingdom Hearts 2, let's get some questions out of the way. Did you play Kingdom Hearts 1? Good! Now, did you play and understand the concept behind what was happening in Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories? Oh, well, don't worry. The only things you need to know are nobodies and organization. Oh, and also the fact that you start the game out as this other character and not Sora. Yeah, that must have been a what did WTF moment for a lot of people who end up skipping out on Chain of Memories. Why are we playing as an older Sora is what my mind was thinking at the time. This is Roxas. He's a young teen going through summer vacation with his three friends, Hainer, Pence, and Olet. And if you enjoy saying the names in that order, then you will enjoy the rest of the game. This is Kingdom Hearts 2's version of Destiny Island. You start out in Twilight Town, a world that was introduced in Chain of Memories, and learn how different the gameplay is compared to KH1. Throughout the majority of Twilight Town, events will be happening and Roxas will end up having dreams about the events of Kingdom Hearts 1. The problems will start to persist throughout the town, causing him to slowly remember who he was. He also meets up with Axel, who is presumed to be dead in Chain of Memories. But before they can have any sort of conversation, Diz from Riku's side of the story of Chain of Memories appears. Meanwhile, the organization tells Axel that he must destroy Roxas or else he will become a Dusk. Axel gives up on Roxas and has one final clash. Roxas finally remembers himself, but ends up returning back to Sora. And boom! Title screen! Yeah, you want to know what's kind of interesting about that? A lot of people were kind of wondering where the title screen was. You know how in Kingdom Hearts 1, the title screen showed up as soon as you exit the tutorial part? Well, yeah, in Kingdom Hearts 2, however, you have to go through kind of like a 2-hour span of tutorials, and you know, it's to go ahead and make you understand Roxas' character. But if you want my honest opinion, the game that comes out after Kingdom Hearts 2 ends up going into Roxas' character a little bit better. That's Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. This game ends up basically going to the backstory of the organization and also Roxas as a whole. But we're not going into that spectrum right now. We can go into that a little bit later. Anyways, after you gain control of Sora again, you notice that Sora's movement and jumps are a little bit different. Well, that's because our man is taller and slightly older. And by slightly, meaning just 1 year older. That's it, not really that old. After meeting up with Mickey and heading to the Disney train, Sora and the gang meet up with Pete, who apparently was working with Maleficent, but we never really saw him in Kingdom Hearts 1. After Pete's failed attempt to stop our heroes, we meet up with Master Yen Sid, as he tells our heroes of their goals, to stop the Heartless, Nobodies, and the plans from the Organization 13. But before we leave, Sora needs some new gear, and thanks to the 3 good fairies, we get Sora's most popular outfit in the Cave series. This black outfit is by far the best Sora has ever looked. But this outfit does not only just come with cool duds, it also has some special powers. Introducing the Drive form. Sora will sacrifice his friends to obtain more power to his abilities. There are a total of 6 Drive forms, one that's exclusive to Final Mix, and another that punishes the player for using it too much. You have Valor form, Wisdom form, Master form, Limit form, and Final form, and alongside your punishing form, Anti form. Valor focuses on both speed and power. Wisdom focuses on magic while also giving Sora a new way of movement. Master is like a red mage, meaning jack of all trades, and a master at aerial combat. Limit is a form that's exclusive to Final Mix and gives Sora his KH1 abilities, but are just a little bit more enhanced, while also replacing his magic bar with his 4 iconic abilities: Sonic Blade, Strike Raid, Ragnarok, and Ars Arcanum. And last is Final Form, a form that can only be obtained after a certain amount of progression in the story has been met. And it's by far the best form in the game that ends up enhancing Sora's magic abilities and his combos at the same time, but also giving him the growth ability Glide. Yeah, unlike in Kingdom Hearts 1 where you got growth abilities such as High Jump, Glide, what have you, in Kingdom Hearts 2, however, these forms need to be leveled up to be able to let Sora obtain said growth abilities, such as High Jump, Dodge Roll, Aerial Dodge, Glide, and Quick Run. Luckily enough, in the Final Mix version, they made them easier to level up, and also if you look in the status screen, they tell you how to level up these moves. So you don't really have to be wondering how you're supposed to be leveling these up. And the final form is the punishing form, which is anti-form. It allows Sora to take on the form of a Heartless at the cost of a lot of combo potential. The problem is, however, it will decrease Sora's defense almost to near zero, making him a glass cannon. But you end up having some crazy combos. The thing that you should end up worrying about though is that unlike in previous Kingdom Hearts games, such as only just the 2 we talked about, in Kingdom Hearts 2, you have to be sure to kill all of your enemies with a combo finisher. So having anti-form doing a bunch of crazy combos but not really executing a combo finisher can be a win or lose situation when you're fighting a boss. After getting your new outfit, Yensid gives our heroes their Gummy Ship back. And don't worry, you don't have to deal with the slow Gummy Ship section like in KH1. In fact, both the map and the Gummy Ship minigames are different. First off, you move the ship around to go from world to world, and the Gummy Ship minigame is much like a 1-to-1 pace of Star Fox 64. The very first world you visit is Hollow Bastion, and it's a nice introduction since it allows Sora to revisit and reunite with the Final Fantasy crew. The HBFFC are dealing with both the Nobodies and Heartless, and they need the help of Sora and the gang once again. But not before the Organization 13 introduces themselves, having less members this time since, well, 5 of their members got axed during Chain of Memories. The worlds you will be visiting this time around are 6 brand new worlds, and 4 old ones. Technically there are 7, but I'm not going to really count one of the worlds because you kind of don't really do much in it. So, the worlds you will be visiting are Land of Dragons, Beast Castle, Port Royal, Pride Rock, Space Paranoids, and Timeless River. And the 4 old worlds are once again Halloween Town, but the plot is actually the movie, Agrabah, which is taking place of the second movie, Olympus Coliseum, which is also taking plot from the movie, and Atlantica, which for some reason brings Ursula back and decides to end up retelling the story of the Little Mermaid. You think that you'll be seeing amazing things in this world, and you'll be right. If your first playthrough, you'll be amazed by every single environment, but as you end up playing the game constantly, you start to see Kingdom Hearts 2's shortcomings. Let me explain. You know how in Kingdom Hearts 1 you can find secrets or find some hidden treasure chests or what have you in some hidden area? Well, this time around you will not be having any of that. There is one area that you will be able to visit in the Final Mix version that ends up having the level design just like Kingdom Hearts 1, but most of the worlds in Kingdom Hearts 2 are mainly big areas with not much to do in them. It lacks the exploration like in Kingdom Hearts 1, which is one of my biggest problems with Kingdom Hearts 2's level design. And you see that more when you go to Pride Rock, a big wasteland of nothing. The only reason this big wasteland exists is just for one boss fight. Can I say the future games do a little bit of a better job? Not really much, just a little bit slightly. Aside from Kingdom Hearts 2's level design, how does the combat feel in this action RPG? Well, the combat is much better compared to KH1, but that's not really much of a surprise considering you've already seen most of the combat just by playing through Roxas' story. They made Sora's combat ability and movement much better than his KH1 playstyle, with the mix of drive forms and the ability to use finishers with your magic attacks and also mixing in finishers after a Keyblade combo. it really ends up showcasing how different a playstyle can be in Kingdom Hearts 2 compared to KH1. And this type of gameplay stays with some of the future games, even if the future games ends up implementing other things in the mix. The bosses are much better as well. Unlike in KH1, where most of your fights can be solved by just whacking them with the Keyblade constantly, KH2 will mostly punish you for that. You see, bosses now have the ability to counterattack. They always had the capabilities of counterattacking, but now they have their own way of counterattacking. If you do a combo fissure to a boss twice, they will most likely counterattack you. Sometimes they will counterattack after one combo. This is what the KH community calls revenge value. This might also be a term used for many action-like games in general though. What it means is that if you do too much damage to a boss, an invisible number would increase, and once that number reaches the maximum, the boss would be invulnerable and counterattack as a result. This is to mostly stop players from mindlessly mashing the attack button to win, and you'll notice that as soon as you end up fighting the super boss, Sephiroth. There are ways to not have the value increase, but that requires learning the game's core mechanics. After you manage to complete the first 3 worlds, you visit Donald and Goofy's home world, Disney Castle, and meet up with Minnie, the Queen. You're tasked to help her out after Maleficent and Pete causes problems in the area. You are sent to the past by heading to a world called Timeless River. This world is nice, having the ability to see Sora in his old art style and getting a nice callback to some Disney characters' design. After finishing Timeless River and saving Disney Castle, you visit a few more worlds and Hollow Bastion gets under attack by both the organization and the Heartless. You see, the way how Kingdom Hearts 2 progresses compared to KH1, you don't have to beat every single world. Mind you, you also didn't have to beat every world in KH1 either. You mostly have to beat 6 worlds for the plot to continue. Once you complete the plot event, you have to beat the same worlds again to get to the final world. Yes, you have to revisit all the worlds a second time since the Heartless and organization become more bolder with their attacks. Does this drag the game out? Not really, because from a story standpoint, it makes sense for the members to try to collect hearts from each world, and, them attacking the Disney worlds again makes a lot of sense. After managing to complete the 6 worlds again, the final area is unlocked, and this is mainly when KH2 reaches its climax. After you find out that there are 2 Twilight Towns and Sora and the gang received a picture with Roxas on it, they head back to Twilight Town to figure out the reason. The Twilight Gang explains that there might be some alternate Twilight Town, and this causes both Sora and the player to be utterly confused.
It does?
But before they can reach the organization's stronghold, they are attacked by nobodies. Luckily for us, Axel, who's already abandoned the organization similar to Roxas, helps out Sora. After Axel's burning sacrifice, he opens the way and allows our heroes to reach the final world, the world that never was. What a very inviting world name. Like, seriously, it's by far the best name ever that you can have for a final area. I should also mention, since I haven't mentioned it already, Yoko Shimomura's soundtrack design is still by far the best thing ever, except for the original Kingdom Hearts 2. Now, hear me out. I'm not really a huge fan of KH2's original soundtrack because it sounds a bit meaty and it doesn't really sound good on the ear. Now, when you play the 2.5 version, you get better soundtracks. Like, let's just hear some of the comparisons, shall we? Anywho, once you reach the world that never was, a lot of things ends up happening in this world. Unlike the final world in KH1, which didn't really have any cutscenes, KH2's final world does end up having some plot elements left and right. As you continue on forward, you might be wondering where those plot elements be. First off, Sora has a fight against Roxas while Zigbar mentions other three, which the player has no clue what that means. Luxor shows up and gets cut down, Sayax gets taken down by Peter Pan, Pete and Maleficent's role becomes useless after this game, Diz turns out to be the real Ansem, Kairi can wield a Keyblade but we don't know why, Riku turns into Ansem because he releases the full darkness inside his heart when fighting Roxas and has really long hair, and the person who was the super boss in KH1 was actually Xemnas. Yeah, all that happens in this world. I'm not going to really go into full detail on this world, mainly because you, the player or the viewer watching this, can enjoy every moment on your own. Kingdom Hearts 2 still is one of the most hold-up praised games up until this point, but it's still one of my favorites in the series, mainly because the combat is so much fun. The abilities Sora has is wonderful, and the quality of life changes for Final Mix brings are great. You get an added challenging dungeon, which is the Cavern of Remembrance, and once you reach the end, you get to fight 13 enhanced super bosses for your pleasure. And you also get one final encounter boss that connects to the next game in the lineup, Birth by Sleep. In fact, I should probably end up mentioning the secret ending for the original Kingdom Hearts 2 didn't really end up explaining a whole lot. It kind of ended up having a little bit more questions. Hell, this was when the rumor of this is KH3 was floating around after KH2's ending was revealed. It's kind of crazy, really. But in all actuality, if you end up watching the Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix version of the ending, you will end up finding out that this is actually the next game in the lineup, which is Birth by Sleep, which is a PSP game. They never learn, considering the fact that the next game, which is 358 over 2 days, which coincide with Birth by Sleep, came out on the DS. Square Enix really loves shilling out their games in such weird ways. I don't get it. It's no wonder people use Kingdom Hearts 2 as a comparison to other games in the series, and, you know, most of the things that KH2 does right are just too good. Now, will I say that I want them to have that for future games? Well, okay, here's the thing. I prefer them to build upon what KH2 did, without removing too much. You don't really need to make a one-to-one KH2 clone, since even though KH2 is an amazing game, the level design is little to be desired. I'll mostly be going into further detail once we get to KH3, and trust me, I have a lot of things to say about KH3. Both my first impressions and my second and third impressions of the game. It's one of the biggest games that I personally really want to talk about, considering the fact of how much I have to say about it. But we'll end up getting to that game once we end up tackling like the next 4 games or 5 games or whatever. Anyways, that's actually the end of my KH2 Pikaview. Next time with the KH universe, we'll be of course looking at either Birth by Sleep or 358 over 2 days. I have to choose which one. One is a game that I can play and the other one is cutscenes I can be able to watch. Who really knows? I've been Pika, and I always end up enjoying the feedback and comments with each and every single of these videos, and I really am sorry that this one took a little bit to come out. I basically have been trying to also kind of look for something on the side. I haven't been really not getting any luck. It also didn't really help that my motivation has been spikingly low of late. But I really hope that, you know, me giving this out to you guys doesn't really end up insinuating that I'm bored or don't want to do this anymore. Because that's not what it is. It's really not. It's just, you know, sometimes you feel like doing stuff, sometimes you don't. I end up live streaming as well, so just in case you want to end up finding out if I'm doing alright, you can always end up asking me there. Anyways, I end up putting the link down below. I'll see you guys in whatever other next review game I decide to do. See yas!